Ontology is the philosophical study of the nature of being, becoming, existence, or reality, as well as the basic categories of being and their relations. Traditionally listed as a part of the major branch of philosophy known as metaphysics, ontology deals with questions concerning what entities exist or may be said to exist, and how such entities may be grouped, related within a hierarchy, and subdivided according to similarities and differences. Although ontology as a philosophical enterprise is highly theoretical, it also has practical application in information science and technology, such as ontology engineering. Overview. In analytic philosophy, ontology deals with the determination whether categories of being are fundamental and discusses in what sense the items in those categories may be said to be. It is the inquiry into being in so much as it is being, or into beings in so far as they exist, and not in so far as particular facts may be obtained about them or particular properties belong to them. Some philosophers, notably of the Platonic school, contend that all nouns refer to existent entities. Other philosophers contend that nouns do not always name entities, but that some provide a kind of shorthand for reference to a collection of either objects or events. In this latter view, mind, instead of referring to an entity, refers to a collection of mental events experienced by a person. Society refers to a collection of persons with some shared characteristics, and geometry refers to a collection of a specific kind of intellectual activity. Between these poles of realism and nominalism stand a variety of other positions, but any ontology must give an account of which words refer to entities, which do not, why, and what categories result. Some fundamental questions, principal questions of ontology include: what can be said to exist? What is a thing? Into what categories, if any, can we sort existing things? What are the meanings of being? What are the various modes of being of entities? Various philosophers have provided different answers to these questions. One common approach involves dividing the extant subjects and predicates into groups called categories. Of course, such lists of categories differ widely from one another, and it is through the coordination of different categorical schemes that ontology relates to such fields as library science and artificial intelligence. Such an understanding of ontological categories, however, is merely taxonomic, classificatory. Aristotle's categories are the ways in which a being may be addressed simply as a being, such as what it is, how it is, how much it is, where it is, its relatedness to other beings. Further examples of ontological questions include: what is existence, i.e., what does it mean for a being to be? Is existence a property? Is existence a genus or general class that is simply divided up by specific differences? Which entities, if any, are fundamental? Are all entities objects? How do the properties of an object relate to the object itself? Do physical properties actually exist? What features are the essential, as opposed to merely accidental attributes of a given object? How many levels of existence or ontological levels are there? And what constitutes a level? What is a physical object? Can one give an account of what it means to say that a physical object exists? Can one give an account of what it means to say that a non-physical entity exists? What constitutes the identity of an object? When does an object go out of existence, as opposed to merely changing? Do beings exist other than in the modes of objectivity and subjectivity, i.e., is the subject-object split of modern philosophy inevitable? Concepts. Essential ontological dichotomies include universals and particulars, substance and accident, abstract and concrete objects, essence and existence, determinism and indeterminism, monism and dualism, idealism and materialism. Types. Philosophers can classify ontologies in various ways using criteria such as the degree of abstraction and field of application. Upper ontology, concepts supporting development of an ontology, meta-ontology, domain ontology, concepts relevant to a particular topic or area of interest, for example, information technology or computer languages, or particular branches of science. Interface ontology, concepts relevant to the juncture of two disciplines. Process ontology, inputs, outputs, constraints, sequencing information, involved in business or engineering processes. History. Etymology. The compound word ontology combines onto, from the Greek new, on, i.e., being, that which is the present participle of the verb epsilon mu iota, I me, i.e., to be, I am, and lambda omicron gamma iota alpha, logia, i.e., science, study, theory. While the etymology is Greek, the oldest extant record of the word itself, the New Latin form ontologia, appeared in 1606 in the work Adoas Scholastica by Jacob Law, Harden in 1613 in the Lexicon Philosophicum by Rudolf Gockel. See classical compounds. For this type of word formation, the first occurrence in English of ontology, as recorded by the OED, came in a work by Gideon Harvey, Archeologia Philosophica Nova, or New Principles of Philosophy, containing philosophy in general, metaphysics or ontology, dynamology or a discourse of power, religia philosophiae or natural theology, physics or natural philosophy. London, Thomson, 1663. The word was first used in its Latin form by philosophers based on the Latin roots, which themselves are based on the Greek origins. Parmenides and monism. Parmenides was among the first in the Greek tradition to propose an ontological characterization of the fundamental nature of existence. In his prologue or proem he describes two views of existence, initially that nothing comes from nothing, and therefore existence is eternal. Consequently, our opinions about truth must often be false and deceitful. Most of Western philosophy, including the fundamental concepts of falsifiability, have emerged from this view. This posits that existence is what may be conceived of by thought, created, or possessed. Hence, there may be neither void nor vacuum, and true reality neither may come into being nor vanish from existence. Rather, the entirety of creation is eternal, uniform, and immutable, though not infinite. Parmenides thus posits that change, as perceived in everyday experience, is illusory. Everything that may be apprehended is but one part of a single entity. The idea somewhat anticipates the modern concept of an ultimate ground unification theory that finally describes all of existence in terms of one interrelated subatomic reality which applies to everything. Ontological pluralism. The opposite of Eleatic monism is the pluralistic conception of being. In the 5th century BC, Anaxagoras and Leucippus replaced the reality of being with that of becoming, and therefore by a more fundamental and elementary ontic plurality. This thesis originated in the Hellenic world, stated in two different ways by Anaxagoras and by Leucippus. The first theory dealt with seeds of the various substances. The second was the atomistic theory, which dealt with reality as based on the vacuum, the atoms and their intrinsic movement in it. The materialist atomism proposed by Leucippus was indeterminist, but then developed by Democritus in a deterministic way. It was later that the original atomism was taken again as indeterministic by Epicurus. He confirmed the reality as composed of an infinity of indivisible, unchangeable corpuscles or atoms. But he gives weight to characterize atoms, while for Leucippus they are characterized by a figure, an order, and a position in the cosmos. They are, besides, creating the whole with the intrinsic movement in the vacuum, producing the diverse flux of being. Their movement is influenced by the parenchysis, and that is determined by the chance. These ideas foreshadowed our understanding of traditional physics until the nature of atoms was discovered in the 20th century. Plato developed this distinction between true reality and illusion, in arguing that what is real are eternal and unchanging forms or ideas, of which things experienced in sensation are at best merely copies, and real only insofar as they copy such forms. In general, Plato presumes that all nouns refer to real entities, whether sensible bodies or insensible forms. Hence, in the Sophists, Plato argues that being is a form in which all existent things participate in which they have in common, and argues against Parmenides, that forms must exist not only of being, but also of negation and of non-being. In his categories, Aristotle identifies 10 possible kinds of things that may be the subject or the predicate of a proposition. For Aristotle, there are 4 different ontological dimensions, according to the various categories or ways of addressing a being as such, according to its truth or falsity, whether it exists in and of itself or simply comes along by accident, according to its potency, movement or finished presence, according to Avicenna, and in an interpretation of Greek, Aristotelian and Platonist ontological doctrines in medieval metaphysics. Being is either necessary, contingent, qua possible, or impossible. Necessary being is that which cannot but be, since its non-being entails a contradiction. Contingent, qua possible being is neither necessary nor impossible for it to be or not to be. It is ontologically neutral, and is brought from potential existing into actual existence by way of a cause that is external to its essence. Its being is borrowed, unlike the necessary existent, which is self-subsisting and is impossible for it not to be. As for the impossible, it necessarily does not exist, and the affirmation of its being is a contradiction.